When the president is saying that he believed it was a political prosecution, does it make it easier for incoming Trump to also say that he's pardoning January 6 rioters because he believes that those are political?
Look, I'm not going to get into what the incoming administration is going to do or not do. That's not something that I'm going to speak to. I've been pretty consistent about that.
And I just look at where Zeke started about the idea of preemptive pardons.
Yeah.
You clearly didn't rule that out. You confirmed that the White House is really considering that in response to
I'm not confirming anything. I'm just saying I'm not going to get ahead of the president on this issue. I'm
Are
not
you ruling out the idea?
There's going to be. He's going to make announcements on pardons and commutations. That is something every president, historically, presidents do.
Maybe people come and asked the president for a preemptive pardon because they're worried about potential.
What I can say is we have seen from advocates, right, who have been very public in lobbying the administration.
Is the president considering blanket pardons for either individuals or groups of people who are fearful of potentially being targeted by the incoming Trump administration?
So look, I'm not going to get ahead of the president.
Is the president considering blanket pardons for either individuals or groups of people who are fearful of potentially being targeted by the incoming Trump administration?
So look, I'm not going to get ahead of the president, but what I can say is that the president is reviewing other pardons and commutations, and I do want to lay out a little bit of the history. The history the president has taken over the last almost 4 years, actions that he's taken, because it's important to note that the president has so far issued 20 individual pardons and 122 commutations. He's issued more sentence commutations at this point in his presidency than any of his recent predecessors at the same point in their first terms. This is in addition to groundbreaking categorical pardons that the president issued to address marijuana possession, convictions, military convictions in the LGBTQ plus community. And as recently as April, if you go back a couple of months, the president issued 11 pardons, 5 commutations for individuals convicted of nonviolent drug offenses who demonstrated a commitment to rehabilitation. So there certainly will be more to say, just more broadly speaking. And as you know, commutations and pardons are usually done when it's the president's final term historically around the holidays. And so certainly there'll be more to come. Anything outside of that, I would say that I'm not going to get into deliberations, private deliberations, and I'm just not going to get ahead of the president.
As press secretary, you committed to speaking to the American people, and I quote, in a transparent way, in a truthful way, and an honest way.
Yes.
And then in July, here at this podium, you were asked about the president pardoning his son, and he said, it's a no, it will be a no, it's a no.
Yes, and that is exactly right.
Of the president's son and that pardon, it became a yes. I'm wondering if you would like to explain to us, the American people, really why the information that you provided turned out not to be true.
And I answered this question on Monday. We spent about 30 minutes on this, almost 30 minutes, roughly 30 minutes on this particular issue. And I'm just going to reiterate what I said on Air Force One to your colleagues when I did the gaggle. And look, if you look at his statement, it's pretty comprehensive. The statement that he put out on Sunday when he made this decision to pardon his son, Hunter Biden. It's in his own voice. I think it takes you through his thinking, and he did. He wrestled with this. And again, he said in his statement, in his own voice, that he made that decision this past weekend. And the fact is, when you think about how the president got to this decision, circumstances have changed. They have. And a couple of things, and I said this on Monday as well. Republicans said they weren't going to let up, weren't going to stop. Recently announced Trump appointees for law enforcement have said on the campaign that they were out for retribution, and I think we should believe their words, right? We should believe what they say. The sentencing was coming up, as you all know. There was a sentencing coming up, and the president said this in his statement, that Hunter and his family had been through enough is enough, and he wrestled with these circumstances, these changing circumstances ultimately. And the combination of that, the president changing his mind and issuing, certainly led to the president changing his mind and issuing this pardon. And one thing that I do want to point to, which I think is important, is what Congressman James Clyburn said when he was interviewed. He said, "I am absolutely okay with it. I don't know how many people urge him to do so, but I did. he seemed to be reticent about it. This is what Clyburn said when he spoke to the president 2 weeks ago. But I emphasized, continuing his quote, emphasized the fact that we as fathers have obligations to our children. So that was a conversation that the congressman himself had with the president two weeks ago, said that the president was reticent when he encouraged the president to do so. And this weekend, he thought about it and he weighed, it was not an easy decision to come to, and he put out a comprehensive statement. And I would certainly, offer that up to folks out there who are wondering. I would say, please read the president's response to this in full.
When the president is saying that he believed it was a political prosecution, does it make it easier for incoming Trump to also say that he's pardoning January 6 rioters because he believes that those are political?
Look, I'm not going to get into what the incoming administration is going to do or not do. That's not something that I'm going to speak to. I've been pretty consistent about that since the election. We've been very clear about where we stand on January 6th, and so not going to get into that. But I think, and some of you have reported this, Republicans have been his political opponents in Congress have been very clear about this. The president talks about this again in his own statement about how they took credit for bringing political pressure on the process when it came to Hunter Biden's plea deal, and so they took credit for that when it fell apart. They took credit for that, and they have said they're not going to stop. And so again, I'm not going to point to one particular reason for the president making this decision. There's been changing factors that led him to where he weighted this decision over the weekend.
And I just look at where Zeke started about the idea of preemptive pardons.
Yeah.
You clearly didn't rule that out. You confirmed that the White House is really considering that in response to
I'm not confirming anything. I'm just saying I'm not going to get ahead of the president on this issue. There's a process. I'm
are
not
you ruling out the idea of preemptive pardon?
What I'm saying is I'm not getting ahead of the president. I'm not. He's going to make announcements on pardons and commutations. That is something every president, historically, presidents do, especially at the end of their term. And so that normally happens around the holiday. So you could expect the president making a decision. What I can talk to and speak to is this particular pardon a couple of days ago of his son and what he's been able to do. I laid out some historic actions that the president has taken when it comes to pardons, when it comes to commutations over the past 4 years, as recently as this past April. I'm not going to get into hypotheticals here. I'm not going to get into the president's thinking.
It's not hypothetical. Have people come and asked the president for a preemptive pardon because they're worried about potential prosecution?
So what I can say is we have seen from advocates, right, who have been very public in lobbying the administration for pardons and clemency, commutations. We've heard from them. You all have seen it. So obviously we've heard them. I'm just not going to get into specifics of what we're going to do, not do. I'm not going to get ahead of the president, and I think you can understand that process that we're going to keep going.